obviously I know a lot of people won't, but I think most people in the UK will have interacted with a charity fundraiser.
Probably you.
Probably me, yeah, if anywhere across the North of England. But you stand on the street, you represent a different charity, and you stop a human being, and your job there and then within a couple of minutes is to build a relationship with that person and inspire them to donate their hard-earned cash to a charity they probably don't know about through like their bank details. And I did that. I worked in the industry for 7 years. So for the first 3 years in and out of doing uni, I worked like part-time, but I was on the street every day. But the last like 4 or 5, I worked as a manager. So my job was to actually like hire people and train people to do that. So I'm sorry to everyone that's been inflicted by that. I do say that kind of jokingly because honest to God, it was the life-defining experience. I really believe that every single person worked in that industry or like a sales industry for 6 months of their life, they would have a newfound appreciation for like the grit and resilience that it takes to get knocked down constantly and still pull yourself and get back up. But also just like how to build a relationship with a human being and how to communicate, especially as we become like more disconnected, even in the world of like social media where you are connected constantly, but actually don't interact with people. It's like invaluable. Like, and I loved it for a period of time, but it wasn't what I ever wanted to do. And I got like the sunk cost fallacy is really real. Oh my God, it's so real. Whether it's like your relationships, whether it's your job, whatever it is you're doing, the longer you are in it, the more of a part of your identity it becomes. And they become really like meshed together. It becomes really difficult. And I think this is quite a cultural thing for us. And I don't know if you feel the same, but like our jobs in the UK are such a part of our identity. It's one of the first questions you ask someone when you meet them, what do you do for a living? Because I think you can tell quite a lot about that person. It also gives you the ability to build common ground. So it became like a massive part of my identity. It's never what I wanted to do, but I kept succumbing to the dangling of carrots. Like anytime, I tried to quit that job 7 times in 7 years.
What would happen when you were quitting?
So I tell my boss, like, I'm really unhappy. Always when I hit a low point. And I think like anybody, low points perpetuate change because you have a moment where you're like, I'm fucking unhappy. And what somebody said it to me and it really stuck with me. It's like, it's only when the idea of staying the same becomes more uncomfortable than changing where you'll actually change.
That's interesting.
And that really stuck with me.
People say, I wish I had the, like people say to me, I wish I could have done what you done. Like that's so scary. And I was like, yeah, but I was at a point where what I was doing was more scary than going for it. Like I was working in a call center and I'd done loads of shit jobs, and the thought of going back to any kind of work like that was way more terrifying than potentially being a bum and no one listening to me on social media and like getting no clients. That was more scary to me.
I was like spending way too long in the shower and not for the good reasons. Just like trying to think of everywhere I could get out of work. And it was, I wasn't myself. It was really, really scary. Like to the point where if I carried on doing that, I probably would have done something stupid, like mental health absolutely plummeted. And
see, when you say mental health plummeted, these were stuff that I wanted to ask you about. Like I said, I don't really want to ask you about mobility. Like anyone who doesn't know who you are, that's what you do. Like your whole thing is like,
just want people to move.
Getting people mobile, but you can go and watch that. But I was more intrigued about when I done the thing that I do with everyone. I go watch their old stuff, and you looked like, I might be wrong, but it's cause I know I was in a similar position. Like when I first started PT and it was lockdown, and I also wasn't known as the guy that goes to the gym. You looked
me neither.
A little bit like lost in life, if you know what I mean. Which everyone was in lockdown, but like also I was starting new jobs. I just was like, I just know his head's in the exact same spot as me going, what am I doing and what even like am I saying to people? Yeah,
100%. A skinny little boy taking too many drugs, not knowing what my place was in the world. Like I was absolutely like a lost little puppy. I think like anybody have low points in my life. I wouldn't say I have struggled with necessarily like depression or anything maybe like clinical, but I have really hit some seriously low points. And I think often that's come with like a real lack of like purpose or direction. And that point for me was categorically the worst. Overall, lockdown was a real net positive in my life, I think because it spurred those changes. But at that point, I was living in Birmingham, lockdown came in. My work were actually paying my rent at the time. I was really lucky, but they stopped paying my rent, obviously, fair enough. And I ended up having to move in. Bastards, how could they? I was finally out of debt. My sister had a spare room in London and I went and stayed with her. And I'll always love my sister for what she like gave me, like that space. But living with your sibling can be tough as it is, especially when you're two completely different characters. And I go from having a job where I interact with people constantly on a day-to-day basis that, again, is part of my identity. It feeds into who I am. To all of a sudden, I don't see anyone ever. And then due to move to Bristol to open up a new office for that company. And I think like 3 days before my move-in date, I hadn't even started looking for places. Like anytime I thought about it or opened up like spare room, I felt my skin like just starts to itch and started to feel that sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach. I just avoided it till it got to the point where I just found myself just walking constantly. I couldn't get the idea out of my head of like wanting to do something stupid. Like the idea of not being on the planet anymore was really rife in my head. It was like, I don't think I ever would have really acted on it. I might be really wrong. But the thought kept coming into my head, and that was the scariest thing for me. And I knew something really needs to change here, because this is the most fundamental human instinct is to stay alive. And something in my head is saying, I don't want to be doing this anymore. That's such a contrast of our fundamental instinct as a human being. And I think if you are experiencing feelings of something is wrong, however that manifests, you have to fucking listen to it. Like it is trying to tell you something needs to change. I'm a real believer that for a lot of us, that starts with changing environment. Probably one of the easiest, I use that term very lightly, one of the easiest things to change, to have a drastic difference. So I called up my boss and I was like, I need to quit. The 7th time I needed to quit. And
by that time, he's probably, I fucking shut up.
Well, it's funny, the time before that I tried to quit, he went, do you want to go to America? I was like, yeah. Went and worked in San Diego for 3 months. Yeah.
Oh, real.
But I think like you, I'd probably be right in saying that you weren't happy where you were. You thought going to a new location would make you happy, doing a new job. And there were elements of it that did, but fundamentally I wasn't dealing with what was inside, that my trajectory was wrong, my values were wrong. I didn't know where I was headed in my life. So although the like change of scenery definitely helped, and this is part of the environment, is not just the location, but the job and the things that you do and how you spend your time and the people you spend your time with. But I called him up the 7th time. I was like, I need to stop doing this. And I remember him saying, he's like, is there anything I can do to help you? I was like, yeah, not convince me to stay. And I went, all right. I went, okay. I think he knew. I was just in tears. I just said to him, I don't recognize myself anymore. I was almost like, even just having that conversation was like a moment of, okay, actually, like, I have the ability to be honest with how I feel and put myself in a situation where I can tangibly change that just by like talking. So yeah, like I hit some really big lows. But truthfully, mate, since then, for the first like year, and I don't know if you found this first being a PT, like first year of being a PT is really fucking hard. Brutal.
Yeah, horrible.
I had less money than I've ever had before. Waking up earlier, standing in freezing cold parks at 6 a.m, training people or trying to find clients. And you forget, like, you're not just becoming a personal trainer, you're becoming a personal trainer that's also like the head of marketing, the head of sales, like you're the head of fucking everything, while trying to manage your own life as an individual that doesn't know who they are.
Mate, you're just fried. you're
absolutely fucked. No wonder some of this are fucked. I think it's a huge burnout rate or like dropout rate in the first year. I don't know what it is, but I was happier than I'd ever been. Like happier than I'd ever been. And I just felt like a real sense of, okay, although I don't really know where I'm going, kind of like the idea of like walk onto a really misty football pitch. I know there's goalposts somewhere. I don't know exactly where they are, but as I'm going to keep walking, it starts to clear a little bit. And okay, I can actually start to see those goalposts.
Fuck me, you're good with these analogies.
Yeah. They'll turn to shit now. Like
my brain has just been opened. I was like, how do I explain this? But that's exactly what I was
appreciate
like.
That, man.
It felt right.
Mm.
Do you know, I felt like I didn't need to be on a rugby pitch.